Time now for our weekly chat with Farhan Lalji from TSN. Farhan, last night, it was only week 2, but a lot of people were curious, how would the Bombers be without Zach Collaros, and how would Nathan Rourke be in week 2? A big win for the Bombers, but it was costly on both sides. Let's talk about, okay, so it was 34-20, Bombers over the Lions, but the big story coming out of the game, the injured stars on each team. Brady Oliveira, upper body, Nathan Rourke, an oblique. Let's start with Oliveira. What do you know?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an extended injury for Oliveira. It's a shoulder injury. I can't sit here and tell you whether it was separated or dislocated or whatever, but it was a meaningful injury. Wouldn't surprise me to see him go on the 6-game injured list at some point here. I know the ramifications around that are a little bit weird this year league-wide, right? Just because of the new cap and how people want to play that. But I think it's that type of an injury. So, disappointing for Winnipeg for sure, but you also, when you look at Brady last year and the Bombers in the whole, they started slow last year. Certainly didn't start slow last night, but you can make the case that you just want to get this guy right for later in the year. And they show they got a pretty good option in Matthew Peterson, who came in and set the world on fire with 23 carries for 130 yards. So you never like to lose a player like Oliveira, but it's good for Winnipeg that they were able to take advantage of some Canadian depth at the position.
Like a lot of people last night, I was trying to flip back and forth between the hockey game and the football game. Did you see the specific play where Oliveira got hurt? Was it something that was like, or was it one of those, we just don't see him in the game anymore? Because that's what the kind of the vibes I got of, like, they were checking, hey, Oliveira's not in. We're checking to see if he's on the bench. So I'm like, did I really miss something? Or was it not a injury on the field?
There was no injury. There was no injury that he had to get treated for on the field at all, right?
Okay.
So we looked at the previous play, the last play that he played. He landed specifically, right, but didn't get up like he was injured or necessarily favoring it. So maybe it happened there. Likely it happened there. But with some of these things, it might have happened 2 plays earlier. You just don't know. But like I said, it is a meaningful injury, and I don't think you're going to see Brady in blue anytime soon here.
Now, Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions. It wasn't Rourke's best game. Statistically, he struggled against that Bomber defense, but there were some highlight reel things happening there. But then he goes out, if they're calling it upper body, I saw something online. Is it an oblique injury? When did that happen? On what play did that happen? Who was it? One of those Willie Jefferson knockdowns or sacks?
Yeah, you could see on the play where he was feeling it, right? Because he got taken down after a throw and he was throwing in traffic with people on him. And then he kind of grabbed his left side briefly. And then he went off. That was a 2nd down play. And so whether it happened right there or whether it first flared up a play or 2 earlier, and then that was kind of a last straw type of thing. Like, with Nathan, one thing you see is that a lot of quarterbacks are very arm-centric, and he's not. It's very much lower body through the core. And if you know the work he does with Rob Williams out here in Vancouver and some other CFL quarterbacks are doing, it's very much about that. That's why Nathan can throw day after day after day, in season and out of season, and his arm never hurts, right? Because it's just not the big part of the mechanics. So the fact that his oblique is strained is a significant thing. Now, I have talked to some people around this injury earlier today, and the Lions right now, it's too early to tell in terms of how this week goes, but I don't think the belief is it's a serious injury. They didn't do an MRI. They believe it's a pull strain type of thing as opposed to a tear. So they're going to, he did see a specialist today. They're going to wait through the weekend and see how it settles on Monday and then determine a course of action. So, I think they want to see how it progresses. You could, with the long week, they just had a short week. Now they've got a long week. Might you see Nathan practice on Thursday or Friday? And, Friday's just a walkthrough, but Thursday, and then they make a decision for Saturday. Yeah, it could go that long. So they haven't ruled him out for this week, which is good because it's not significantly serious. If it's me, I don't play him this week just because I don't want it to get serious. He always finds a way to get the ball out, even when people are draped all over him. Remember that play in the preseason against Jacksonville, right?
Yeah.
That crazy touchdown that went viral. That's a result of his core strength and how he uses that part of his body. So no play is ever dead, and that's a dangerous thing, a dangerous place to be in. So I would hope they are ultra cautious because this is a marathon, not a sprint, and I would sacrifice another loss if it meant getting Nathan Rourke back at 100%. But again, too early for those decisions at this point. We'll know more on Monday.
The big story going into the game, with Zach Calero sitting out his one-game suspension, Chris Streveler, the Bombers' starting quarterback. But after the injuries, so basically it was just Streveler kind of doing his thing. He was 15 for 24, 246 yards, 3 TDs. He's never been the prettiest passer. No one's ever going to accuse him of that, but he did just enough when they needed it to get the job done. I would say, Chris Streveler, you ticked all the boxes yesterday for coming in to do what you needed to do to help the team get the win.
For sure. There's no doubt. And, when you have a long week like they did, because you're coming off the bye and you can put that much time into a game plan, you can really, really dial into what Chris Streveler is going to do well or not do well, right? And, we all know the limitations, and you're right. It's not pretty, but, the box score looks pretty. When it's 34-20 and you're on the winning side, that looks pretty. And I think Streveler just cares about that. He just cares about his teammates and just finding ways to get the ball down the field. And, with the way they were running the ball, and from a Lions standpoint, that's a pretty big indictment, right? That, you've got a Winnipeg team that's dealing with some injuries of their own going into the game. You then lose Brady Oliveira, and so now you got backup quarterback, backup MOP running back, and yet they made it look easy, right? I mean, 23 carries for 130 yards against a BC Lion defense that last week did really well against a good Edmonton run game. They were not close to good in this game on that side of the ball, and it's funny, whenever Nathan Rourke plays Winnipeg, because understand that in that amount of time, BC has beaten Winnipeg, right? Like when Vernon Adams has been in quarterback and, but Nathan Rourke hasn't. And every time Nathan plays them, they get behind early, big, right? In 4 of the 5 games they've now played, Winnipeg has had a 2-score lead very early in that game, and that happened again. I think this game was deceptively close. The other guy I think you got to give a lot of credit to, along with Chris Streveler and Matthew Peterson, is Jason Hogan in his first game as the offensive coordinator at this level, and really at a high level. So the fact that he was able to do that and keep Mike Benavides and that Lions defense off balance with the run, with the pass, have wide open players in the play action game, I think you got to tip your hat to the offensive coordinator that people didn't necessarily have a book on as well.
The Riders play the Bombers 3 times this year. Thanks, schedule maker. 2 of those are in Winnipeg. Farhan, I forgot that the Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense, for it being the first game of the year, already looked like a well-oiled machine at times. They look good and dominant and fierce at times. And I'm like, this is not what we need being part of Rider Nation.
No, you're right. And they understand Jordan Younger's system. I got to be honest, like personnel-wise, outside of Willie Jefferson, I still think they're pretty average up front, yet they find ways, and maybe that speaks to BC's O-line not being good despite dressing 4 Americans, but they find ways to generate pressure on the quarterback without having to bring 5 and 6 guys on the regular. I mean, sure, there are plays where they do bring extra, but it's amazing how much time they can get pressure with 3 or 4 or, 3, then 1 more attached and twist game and things like that. Like they found ways to make Nathan Rourke's life miserable early in that game. He was 2 for 11 for 11 yards until that big play to Aiden Eberhardt late in the first half. So like for 28 and a half minutes, there was nothing going. And even in the secondary, right? Like Jamal Parker's at safety, replacing Brandon Alexander, who's missed a lot the last couple of years with injury. So they've got people that know what they want, and they can play back and play soft and come up and tackle and still wind up getting pressure. So, it's amazing what they're able to do without being overly exotic and overly complicated. They just play the basics, and they play them really, really well.
Everyone's like, the Bombers are old. Well, old was okay last night. All right, tonight, Alouettes.
Well, and the other thing, listen, don't minimize the fact that, I looked at this game and I saw the amount of complementary football that one team played and one team didn't play, right? BC or Winnipeg makes a mistake on their special teams, which is rare, and BC has them pinned at their own 2-yard line. The offense makes some plays for them. BC makes, a 79-yard touchdown pass to Keon Hatcher. Big return coming right out of the gate. They play complementary football in ways that prevent other teams from getting any level of momentum. And that's part of the culture and part of the secret sauce in terms of what they do. From a Lions perspective, complementary football didn't exist. Winnipeg had it in spades yesterday.
No Drew Brown tonight for the Red Blacks, their home opener against the Alouettes. Would we have to go if we had to choose? Would we go Alouettes in this one just because of just who they are and who Ottawa isn't because of injuries?
Yeah, I mean, look, Ottawa's still got some skilled players, but Matthew Schultz is he's just kind of a guy, right? Like he's got experience.
I know.
We'll see what he can bring in this situation, but he's not a guy that's going to strike fear in the hearts of that defense. And you talked about Winnipeg's defense and how good they looked last night, and we know Saskatchewan's got a great defense, but then the other one is Montreal, right? I mean, they were lights out last week, and I know you're facing Nick Arbuckle and a team in Toronto that's had some change. But that defense doesn't miss a beat. They don't have an elite pass rusher, but Noel Thorpe finds a way to dial up a lot of creative pressures at the key times to make sure they still find ways to make life difficult on a quarterback. And I think they're going to do that again. So, and Davis Alexander, I'm so bullish on him. He looked good last week. He's going to continue to get better and better week after week. And yeah, I don't know, even though the fact that they're at home, I find a difficult path to victory with a backup quarterback for Ottawa, in a run game that didn't get established last week either.
Stamps Argos tomorrow. It's the prelude before the Rider game. Stamps, hey, they did what they needed to. They won last week. They beat Hamilton at home. But now they go on the road. Like you had mentioned, the Argos do have some problems. The Stamps have some holes. Just quarterback-wise, I got to go with big play via over Nick Arbuckle just because. But as Ryan Dinwiddie at home, sometimes it doesn't make sense, and then the Argos win, and that's what they do under Dinwiddie.
They do, and you're right. It doesn't make sense, right? I mean, the Montreal-Ottawa game is predictable. This one isn't. I picked Calgary to win because of VA, like you said, and I like what they've got offensively. Calgary's defense looked good last week against Hamilton, but I'm not sure, right? Because there's so much new there. I got a ton of time for Bob Slowick, their defensive coordinator, but they're still new. And Toronto, I'd love to just jump it back and say, look, they're at home and they'll find a way, and they might. But again, like 7 new starters on the defensive side of the ball for them. So I'm not sure they can just flip a switch and figure it out this early in the season. They may need to wait for Chad Kelly to get back and make that offense more explosive and not put as much pressure on that defense. So is it possible? Have they surprised us before? I mean, we only have to look to the Grey Cup last year, and we saw Nick Arbuckle put on a show. So against a defense like this, he could do that. But I still think Calgary finds a way to win in this game. But I'm not as bullish on that one as I am on the other one that's happening with Ottawa and Montreal.
Riders hit by the injury bug since the last game, a bunch of starters out. But it means newly signed running back Kadeem Carey will be in the lineup. He'll be backing up A.J. Ouellette. Roland Milligan's back. They take on the Ticats tomorrow, their home opener. Bo Levi at home, who's had success against the Riders in his career, no matter where he's been. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm probably still going to pick Sask, or I have picked Sask, but again, not as bullish on this one as I am on Montreal, Ottawa, because, Bo still has the ability to put up points, and they're at home. I've got more questions on Hamilton's defense than anything else, and I think Trevor Harris is going to find a way to exploit that, and I like what they're doing offensively in Saskatchewan, so yeah, I know they're on the road, but I still think Saskatchewan finds a way to win. When you look at their issues right now, I think the bigger one is the injuries along the offensive line, right? I mean, you're going to have Carey, you're going to have Ouellette, you're going to need those guys to put that Hamilton team off balance. But, Milligan back is a big deal, right? Like not having to lose him, he's such a game changer for that defense. I think they're going to make life difficult for Bo Levi in his home opener.
My brain is still in a bit of a pretzel from the hockey game last night. We won't go too deep into it. The only thing I want to know from you is, will this go 7 games?
Yeah, you'd have to think so, right? And if you're Florida, they're pretty unfortunate the way things went down for them because you got a 3-0 lead. The Oilers are showing no signs of life. And all of a sudden they get a power play and now it's 3-1 and everything changes, right? Because they didn't come out in the period on fire either. Like it looked like they were dead and buried. They just got some good fortune, took advantage of it. And then even in the overtime of that game, and again, I was going back and forth, but I did watch a little bit after the fact. Even the overtime, Florida dominated that overtime. Sam Bennett's going to have that crossbar and Calvin Pickard save in his nightmares, and then just a fortunate bounce off a defenseman that gives Edmonton new life. So I think Florida's the better team. But Edmonton's going to be tough to beat again at home, right? So I
Mhm.
just I can't see this thing not going seven. I really can't. Florida's not going to lose three straight. It's just not going to happen that way. They'll find a way to win one more here and get this to seven. And Edmonton having two games at home, I just think they're going to find a way to win as well. So it will get back there. Edmonton got fortunate last night, but it isn't the first time, and they'll take full advantage of it.